Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. I think we might be expecting a couple more people in a few minutes, but I just wanted to show you a couple of things. Firstly, you may notice that this is not the National Space Centre. I wish it was, with my fish tank and everything, but sadly it is not. Due to the latest government restrictions, we have not been able to actually go down to the Space Centre tonight. That's a picture of it in the middle, by the way, so that's the Space Centre there. We are hoping to go back there in the new year, especially being as we've managed to secure Susie Imber, who won the So You Want to Be an Astronaut thing on the television, who is also a physicist and looks at Mercury the whole time. So we'll hope to be doing that. But tonight I am very pleased to welcome Maggie Read, who is a physicist at the British Museum, and Aisha Gilbert, who is a physicist at Rolls Royce. That's the people, you may guess from her background, that's the people who make aeroplane engines, not the people who make cars. So what we're going to do this evening is that Aisha and Maggie are going to tell us a bit about themselves and what they do. And then you are all welcome to write some questions for them. Now, the way you write these questions, you will see up in the corner, you've got this little arrow here. If you click on that, you get this box out there and you can put the question in there. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Right, so I'm just going to tell, somebody can't hear anything. I'm just going to tell them to log out and back in again, because that is the way you fix it. Right, so if I could now ask Maggie, did we say you were going first?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, excellent. Shall I share the screen with you as well?
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay. Can you see my screen okay?
Hopefully. Yeah, that's fine.
So yeah, I'm a physicist, just in the final year of my PhD, and I work with the British Museum. So we work on using science to be able to help explain old objects, how they were made or produced or where they were produced. And we also work in preserving them as best as possible. So this could be conservation techniques, so helping apply different materials to stop them becoming more damaged, or it could be in the way they're stored, so making sure that they're in a well insulated or the correct temperature. So I actually work on two types of objects. So both are types of glass. So one's to do with this conservation techniques and preserving them, and this is on glassy type objects, and the other is on Egyptian type objects that is more ceramic-y, and they're known as faience. So that's a bit about what I work on, and I try and apply. So this is me in a survey I did last year before COVID, and this is applying some different experimental techniques to try and conserve these objects and these enamels as best as possible. So I try and do this by several techniques, so we don't just use one, we use lots of different ones that show us different aspects of the damage and deterioration process. So that sort of brings me on to just talking to you about how I got to doing a PhD at the British Museum. And I suppose starting from the beginning, I liked maths and I liked classics at school. So classics is reading sort of very ancient texts and getting to know the way ancient civilizations used to live. And then I went on to study physics at university, and I really enjoyed applying maths and science to the real world. So at the end of my undergraduate degree, I didn't really know what to do. And then I saw that the British Museum was wanting a physicist or scientist to look at these objects that were deteriorating, and it seemed the perfect area for me to apply to. So I applied to it, and that's how I ended up here. And I suppose to just tell you some facts that aren't physics related about myself that might be a bit random, but if you want to ask me about them, that's okay as well. So a few facts. I used to be a national figure skater. I don't know if anyone likes sports, but it's a bit of a different hobby. I really like animals. I have 2 cats myself, Pippa and Tilly. I climbed Kilimanjaro for charity, and I really like mountain biking, road cycling, and weightlifting. So that's pretty much my introduction and what I do and a bit about who I am.
Thanks very much for doing that, Maggie. It's interesting. I'm always surprised at how different all the jobs that our physicists go into. Everybody who comes along here has a very different experience and does very different things. And I can't imagine something more different than looking at objects in a museum to building aeroplane engines. And so with that marvelous segue, I'm now going to hand over to Aisha to tell us a bit about her.
Marvelous. Okay. Hopefully that's sharing now.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Okay, so hello, I'm Aisha. I guess technically I'm an engineer rather than a physicist, but engineers use physics every single day. It's sort of a very real life application of physics. So have a little bit about who I am, and then I'll tell you how I got into the job that I am at the moment, and then what I do as a job. So I'm a guide leader in Derby, and I enjoy being outside, walking, running, canoeing, anything like that. And when I'm not outside, I'm probably inside sewing, which oddly is a very good skill for an engineer because it requires quite a lot of logical thinking and gives a bit of a creative outlet. I really like animals. I really want a dog, but it's kind of hard when you work full time. So anytime anyone brings dogs or any of their pets along to the meetings, my guides especially bring their dogs along to every meeting, which was always great. So here we go. What did I do at school and how I got to where I am? So up until probably the middle of high school, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. When I was in primary school, I wanted to be an artist. I liked being creative, but it turned out I wasn't actually that good at art, so I couldn't really go down that route. But something I did enjoy was sort of design and technology and electronics, because it had a bit of creativity in it, a bit of designing, and then also had quite a practical application of some other subjects I enjoyed, like maths and science. So I did electronics and art for my GCSEs, as well as maths, science, English, that sort of thing. Something that's always been really important for me is to see the reason why I'm learning something. So I was always asking my teachers, how does this maths thing apply to what I do in real life? So definitely recommend, if you don't know why you're doing something in school, just ask your teachers if you can't work it out yourself. So by the end of high school, I knew that I really wanted to do electronics or engineering. So when I was at sixth form, I did engineering, maths, physics and chemistry. And they all linked really well together because physics and chemistry is a sort of practical application for maths, and then engineering is a really practical application for physics and chemistry. And then at the end of sixth form, I decided to apply for some apprenticeships, which is sort of a practical way of learning a job and getting some qualifications at the same time. So I really liked planes, and so I decided to apply for things in aerospace, which means something to do with planes and flying and space and that sort of thing. And then that's how I got into working at Rolls Royce, because I got an apprenticeship at Rolls Royce. So as David said earlier, Rolls Royce, you might think cars, but actually they do power systems. So they make engines for planes, trains, boats, as well as some of the power stations which provide the electricity for the whole country. So I work in civil aviation, which is the part of Rolls-Royce which makes the planes and makes the engines for the planes that you might use when you go on holiday. So aeroplane engines use a lot of physics for them to be able to fly. So I'll show you a photo of them here. So you can see at the front of the engine, there's this massive fan. So that sucks lots and lots of air in. And then as the air goes through the engine, it gets squeezed really, really tightly together. You can sort of see how the engine gets smaller and smaller into the middle. And then in the middle of the engine, the air is heated really, really hot, which makes it expand really quickly. And then the air is blown out the back of the engine. So I don't know in science at school whether you've looked at forces. So if you have a balloon and you blow air out the back of it, the balloon will go in the opposite direction, and a plane engine is exactly the same. And then the shape of the wings on the plane are designed so as the engines make the plane move forward, the wings make the plane move upwards at the same time. So it's all about forces, which you'll learn about in school. So my job is a repair engineer. So we look at materials that can be used for repairing engines. So we have to think a lot about how hard the material is, how heavy it is. Something else you might have looked at is sort of solids, liquids and gases. So we need to make sure that the materials that we use stay solid at the really, really hot temperatures that are in the engine. So that's really important as well. So when you're doing your materials at school, you've got a practical application for that. And then the repair that I'm looking at the moment is on a component called a seal segment, and it has a bit on it. You can sort of see this wavy pattern that wears in the engine, so that's worn away and we need to replace it. So we use a technique which is a little bit like 3D printing, but using metal instead of plastic. So yeah, that's a very interesting repair, and that's what I'm working on at the moment. And I work with lots and lots of really, really clever people who know far more about materials and that than I do, but you learn lots of things, and I think that's probably my favourite bit about my job, is how much you learn. So there we go, that's a bit of a background. Yeah.
Thank you, Aisha. I just realised I said all of that whilst being muted. That's a really great bit about working teams, because people think that scientists work by themselves, and we don't. We work in teams and we work together, and you never stop learning. So I'd like everybody to start asking some questions, that would be great. So as you can see, up in the corner, you'll have this little button here. You can open it up, and then you can add the questions into that box there, and I can read them out, and Aisha and Maggie will be able to answer all of them. I am absolutely sure they will. The first one I've got here is, what is the first experiment you can remember doing at school? God, that's put you on the spot, hasn't it?
I think for me, the first one I can think of is having a wooden car or toy and on a slope, and trying to measure the time from when you let it go to the bottom of the slope, and trying to understand how gravity works and things like that.
Yeah.
How about you, Aisha?
The first one I remember doing is the vinegar and bicarbonate of soda volcanoes, where you put the bicarb in your volcano and then tip the vinegar in and it explodes everywhere. I think that's probably the first one I can remember.
That was always a good fun one. There's a more advanced one we can do as well, where we launch rockets with kind of like more or less the same version. Right, Nayara wants to know what, I guess this is for you, Aisha, what got you into liking aeroplanes? I can see a lot of pictures.
I'm not sure. I think I've always enjoyed traveling, and we sort of went to quite a few foreign countries when I was little, and you always travelled on an aeroplane, so it was always quite interesting. I wanted to know how they worked. So yeah, I think that's probably why.
And Sia is asking a question I think is for both of you. And well, 8 questions just came in at exactly the same moment then. So the next one is, why did you choose to become a physicist? Want to go first, Maggie? Was there a moment when you realised?
Well, I think it was probably about year 7 or 8, and I really enjoyed maths, but I didn't really enjoy the abstract stuff that I couldn't like back up with understanding visual applications. So I really enjoyed trigonometry, things like that, and so from there I wanted to do, so I suppose at GCSE level I liked maths more, but the application of maths. So then when I went to sixth form, I decided maths and physics was for me, but then from there that's where I decided physics was more what I wanted to do, but not making sure that I'm applying maths all the time, and that's my underlying sort of ideas of where they stem from, etc.
Cool. I think I'm very similar to Maggie, that I always wanted to know why I was doing something, and I didn't really enjoy maths up until maybe towards the end of high school, and then suddenly it clicked because my maths teacher had given me some proper applications to why I was doing the maths, and then I enjoyed physics at school. My teachers always made it really exciting for me, and then, as I said before, sort of bringing that creativity in from art and that, it just all combined together really well, and I decided that's what I wanted to enjoy, and sort of just fell into it really from the subjects that my teachers had made exciting for me.
Okay, Avan says she knows this isn't a science question, but do you two play netball?
I used to play netball. I played it in primary school and then had a bit of a break, and then played it in high school and sixth form as well.
For me, I've never really been a netball player. I've always preferred either football or rugby, so using my feet rather than my hands. I don't know why. I've just never been very good at throwing a ball, so I decided to kick one instead.
I used to play football, but I was terrible at it. Much better at that.
Hang on a second. Something has gone wrong with my thing, so I can't read the questions. Just a moment, please. Hang on. Oh, there we go. There we go. Yeah, got it again. Got it again now. Right. Last one there. So Summer wants to know, how does it feel being a physicist?
I think it's exciting, actually, because the more you learn, the more you realise there is to learn. So there feels like there's a whole sort of world of possibilities out there to learn and expand what you know, and to be able to share with people and work with people who know more than you. So yeah, it's very exciting.
I think for me, I suppose I'm going to take an experience from my PhD. I thought sort of science and experimental results and analysis was a linear process. So you keep climbing the mountain at the same rate and speed. But since starting my PhD, I've found that there's really, really good days and you find out loads and you analyze something and you get the result you want, but there are also a lot of times where you're trying to discover and find out more and more things, and it can be a little bit frustrating sometimes. So you have to just keep going and try and get through those times that slightly flatter and not as sort of increasing and finding out the results that you want. So yeah, I think that's probably the one thing that I found with my PhD.
Okay, Megan wants to know, what was the best experiment you did at school? So I asked you about your first one. What was your best one, your favourite one?
We made pennies turn gold in year 7 chemistry, and I think that was my favourite thing. I had this gold penny on my like shelf at home for ages just because I thought that was really cool.
I think for me, it might have been sort of doing radiation and with the Geiger counter, because you can't see any of it with your eyes like with light, or with certain wavelengths of light, but it's there and you can detect it with these really cool detectors. So I think having all of that and being able to record it, but not actually be able to see it, I thought that was quite good when I was younger.
I know everybody's asking a lot of questions, and I promise we're getting through them as quickly as we can. So thank you for everyone who's sending them in now. We're still answering questions from about 5 minutes ago. So we are going to get there, hopefully, although we will finish at 6:30. So I'm going to ask these two together. Umika wants to know what your favourite subject in school was, and Pavan wants to know what your least favourite subject was, and which one did you know you wanted to say. So best and worst, what do we think?
I think my favourite was electronics, which I studied at GCSE, and my least favourite was drama. I hated it.
I think I'm going to agree with Aisha on the electronics. I really enjoyed that. I did that at GCSEs as well, and I just really enjoyed getting my hands on different PCBs, etc., and all the different electronic components. And I think for me the worst subject was English. I never got on with it. It was one that I really had to work at school. But saying that, most subjects serve a purpose, if not all, so it's always worth to keep going.
Okay, both Lily and Abby want to know what's the favourite thing about your job? What's the best thing about your job?
For me, handling objects that are over 2,000 years old, that just thinking about how they were made, the things these objects will have seen, that I always am so speechless when I get to see a new object and get to actually think about how it's made and how old it is. These things were made when the pyramids were made, and yeah, that always fascinates me every time.
I think the favourite bit about my job is sort of being able to connect all the dots, because my job requires me to talk to lots and lots of different people who have sort of very in-depth knowledge about one thing, and then I bring all of that together. So you learn lots of little bits about lots of things, and then sort of understanding how that all works together. I think that's definitely my favourite bit.
Okay, Ariane has a particular question for Maggie. She's really interested in the Egyptians. Have you ever worked with anything from Egypt?
Yes, I that's part of my PhD. I work with lots and lots of objects, jewellery, small figurines, and I try and figure out how they're made. And I really enjoy it because we don't really know how they're made, some of these objects, the details on how they're made. So it's really, really interesting to use physics to try and find out how they're made, where they're produced, if there's any commonalities in different areas, and just try and figure out these objects that are very, very old. So yeah.
I see we've got a question from Molly saying, what made you a scientist? But I think we've kind of done that one a bit. So I hope you got that answer, Molly. And Emma wants to know, if you could have any job in the world, what would it be?
Is that any job in the world other than the one I've got now?
Yeah, I think that, well, if this is the job, the one job out of any that you want is the one you've got. Firstly, you're very lucky. And secondly, you can say that. I don't think anyone from Rolls Royce is listening.
I think the job I've got now is a stepping stone to the job I want in the future. So I'm really interested in looking at sort of digital technologies and how they feed into the repair work that I do. So I think that's where I'd want to be in the future, looking at digital.
For me, I really, really enjoy my PhD, but I hope to become a teacher and sort of show young people how to start their PhD or start academics in general, and hope to bridge that gap that actually physics isn't necessarily, you don't sit in a dusty office working out equations all day. We can actually do some really cool stuff.
Brilliant. And Abigail wants to know, who inspires you? Is there anyone who's inspired you?
Wow.
It's a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think there's lots of people who have inspired me. I think my dad was probably the first person who inspired me because he was a chemist. And then when I was a child, he used to do loads of really wacky experiments with me and just sort of let me have free reign as to what experiments I wanted to run at home. So I'd say my dad's probably my main inspiration.
For me, I'd probably say because when I was at A level, I did a small project looking at historical figures in physics. And I'd probably say Marie Curie was one of the people who really stuck out to me and is someone who I sort of thought back to throughout my throughout my undergraduate, because she sort of pioneered going into universities when there were no women there. She wasn't allowed in some areas of the university because it just wasn't done. And sometimes when I was the only girl on the course or in the group, I just sort of thought, you've got to keep going sometimes, or if there was any times when I found my degree hard, I sort of just thought back to, actually I've got this opportunity and it wasn't there always, and you've just got to not take it for granted.
Rachel would like to know if you enjoy your job, and Abby wants to know what's the best thing you've worked on. I'm guessing you enjoy your jobs. That one, I think we should say yes to. Yeah.
Definitely. I think, to be honest, what I'm working on at the moment is probably my favourite thing that I've worked on, because it's just such a cool process to 3D print metal with lasers. It's just, yeah, amazing stuff.
For me, probably priceless objects. It's nerve-wracking and exciting because you think, don't trip up, but it's just so interesting to think how these objects got to here, in many different ways, because I work on a large timeline of different objects from Egypt all the way up to the medieval France area. So it's a very large collection of objects. So just all the different priceless artifacts from all different time periods, and thinking about how they got to this point in their lives.
Now, Nayara is still very intrigued by your sporting careers and wants to know if you play basketball or football. Why don't we do this? Why don't you list all the sports you play?
We might be here for a while. I've given a lot of sports a go. I think when I was younger, I did sort of football, skating, and a little bit of horse riding as well. And then when I was at university, did more sort of rowing, rugby, and weightlifting and things like that. So it changed quite a lot when I got to university, because you get a lot more opportunities to try different things as well. So it was, yeah, quite a lot.
Yeah, as I said, I did netball when I was in primary school, and then I also took up roller skating, and sort of did a bit of artistic roller skating and roller hockey. I also did horse riding, and I played netball and football for my school. And then I've recently taken up canoeing, both like whitewater and canoe touring, and walking, and I do a lot of running now. I did play a little bit of basketball at high school in PE and really enjoyed it, but I wasn't good enough to make our school team, unfortunately. I'm not actually that good at team sports, unfortunately.
I think you're muted.
Amy's asked a question. Apparently it's from Molly. And I've brought in my answer to the question, which is, if you had a dog, what breed would you get? Okay, so this is my little half Dachshund called Toby.
Oh.
So he's half Dachshund Jack Russell. And this is my King Charles Spaniel Jack Russell called Charlie. No, I've forgotten which of you says that you really want a dog. There was somebody, wasn't there?
Really, yeah,
I did too.
So what kind of dog would you get?
I'd have a greyhound or an Irish wolfhound, but Irish wolfhounds are a bit big, so I've scaled it back to a greyhound.
I'd like a greyhound too, but I'd also kind of want a dog that could come on lots of adventures with me. And I know greyhounds are a bit of couch potato, so I think I'd maybe like a terrier, something like that, something that can come on a big walk or a long run with me.
Okay, Claire wants to know, is it hard being a physicist?
I think there's bits of it that's hard, definitely. But if you enjoy it, the hard bits just become challenges. And once you've overcome them and you can look back and go, oh, wow, I did that. And that gives you sort of the motivation to get through the next hard bit.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think sometimes it can feel a bit overwhelming when you've got a lot of data or a lot of things in front of you to do. but I tend to break it down and make a list, and break it down into manageable chunks if I feel a bit overwhelmed with some of the tasks that I've got to do.
And I think something else on that is remembering that you're not on your own with it, that you've got other people around you which are interested in the same thing or will help you in some way. Even if they don't know the answer, they might just be there to help you think it through. So even if it's hard, you can ask other people to help you develop your ideas.
Sia would like to know, are there many women physicists in your workplace? Interesting question.
Well, for me, if I was to tell you university-wise, because I work at both the university and the museum, so I collaborate between both. University-wise, we have a few females in our department. It's got better since I've been a PhD student at university. Undergraduate was quite heavily, quite a lot of boys. But at the museum, there's quite a lot of females in the science department. It's probably the majority of people there are females, so very different.
I think roughly 10% of engineers are female. So there's a few, the previous team that I was on, I was the only female out of 15 of us, but now I'm in a team of 5 and there's me and 1 other female, which is nice. It feels like a good balance.
Aisha, Claire wants to know why you don't like drama.
I don't like drama. Oh, I just hated like acting and doing things in front of people, which is really strange because this is fine, but having to do it at school and like put on plays and that, it was just my worst nightmare. I just hated being like center of attention and that sort of thing. Not my cup of tea.
And on the same kind of theme, Annabelle wants to know, and actually Claire also wants to know, what's the worst thing about your job, or are there any bad things about your job?
If you don't get the result you want. So you go,
Maggie.
Oh, you sure? It's probably if you don't get the result you want. It can sometimes be quite difficult to sort of rethink, reevaluate, and sort of try and take it from a different stance or take a different angle or re-look at the data when you've already spent loads of time trying to analyze it. So for me, sometimes that can be quite difficult.
I think my worst bit of the job is having, I think it's probably something to do with a big company. There's quite a lot of layers of people that you have to convince that your project is important, because loads of people are doing loads of projects that save the company lots of money or something like that, and you've got to sort of put your case across to say, here, this is what I'm doing, this is why it's important. I find that really difficult. I think that's probably my least favourite bit.
Summer would like to know more about your electronics that you studied. So she says, what type of electronics did you study? But if you'd like to talk about that, that would be great.
So my
yeah, you go, Aisha.
My degree's in electronics, so I've done a little bit of electronics that you'd do, like making little games or motorized vehicles, stuff like that. And then I've done a bit of like household wiring and looking at countrywide power systems and sort of electrical systems. Quite a bit with sensors in my apprenticeship, looking at sort of aircraft engine test beds and making sure that you're getting all the data off the engine. And then my final year project for my degree was looking at digital twins, which is creating a digital version of a physical object using lots and lots of sensors on an engine, so you can sort of have like a completely digital version of something.
Anything to add, Maggie, or is
well, I only did electronics at GCSE, and I did do an AS in it, half an A level. So my electronics is more to do with just creating small games. I think I created a steady hand game, and at A level I did a timer of some sort. So yeah, a little bit less experience in that direction, but I definitely say if you enjoy physics, definitely do electronics, because it's at GCSE and A level, it's really good fun.
any of you who are watching and really like the idea of electronics, you can actually buy little kits, you know, so you can get little boards that you can then stick all the wires into and do the electronics yourself at home. Now, Abby has got a cracking question here. Do you get to travel abroad with your work?
Do you want to go first, Aisha?
I can do. I haven't yet, but I think that's mainly due to all the pandemic stuff that's going on at the moment. So one of the companies that I work really closely with is over in Ireland, and then we've got another company that I'll be working closely with in the coming years who are over in Singapore. So there's lots of opportunity to travel. We just can't at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah, for me, yeah, I've done a lot of traveling with my PhD. It's pretty much get involved as much as you want to and how much you want to present your work, and dependent on the university and the funding that you have. But I've been to Athens, I've been to Germany a couple of times, I think. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity to, and I would have gone on more this year, but with COVID I haven't been able to. But there is a lot of opportunity if you want to travel with your with research, and you do a lot of good research and get some results. You can present them at different conferences, and it's yeah, so it's as much or as little as you want to travel, really.
I can endorse it. So I'm much older than our two guests here today, and I've been working as a physicist for a long time, and I've got to go to Paris and Washington and Las Vegas and Orlando and San Diego and Mexico. So yes, career in science really can get you abroad with other people paying for it. Right, Pavan would like to ask Maggie, so you like working with stuff from ancient Egypt. So did you like history at school?
Yes, I actually preferred the older history though, probably BC's rather than AD sort of timeline. So I did both classics at GCSE, and that was looking at sort of ancient Athens, Sparta, Egyptians, and then I went on to do archaeology as a fourth subject at A level. So I did I did maths, physics, chemistry at A level, and then I did half an A level in archaeology as well. So I've always had quite an interest, but that doesn't mean you have to from such a young age. I mean, you can be interested in history and not do it as a subject. So that I know a few people who have come in to do a PhD who haven't had as much experience in history.
And Abby wants to know, what's the oldest object you've worked on?
Probably between 3000 and 2000 BC. So quite old. Yeah, I think it was in one of the pictures actually I showed, but I think that's 18th dynasty, which is around 2000, 3000 BC.
Right. Claire wants to know, sorry, not Claire, Lily wants to know, are we all still working because of COVID?
Yeah, very much so. I probably work longer hours now than I did before because I don't have to travel into London. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm having to work from home, but yes, still working. Lots and lots to do. Aircraft are still flying and still need repairing, even though people aren't flying as much. And actually, it gives us a really good opportunity to get as many repairs in place as possible, which keeps engines flying and planes flying for longer.
Yep, I've also been working all the way through lockdown, and I echo what Maggie says. I seem to be working harder now than I was before. Right, a question for Aisha this time. Lily wants to know: have you ever seen? Have you ever seen a World War plane? I don't know which one she was talking about, but
I have, not part of my job. Although we have got like a museum in Derby, which we sometimes hold events in, which has lots and lots of engines from the planes that would have flown in the World Wars. But as I said, I was very interested in planes when I was younger, so we used to go to lots of air museums, and I used to live near a big airfield, and they used to fly the Spitfires fairly regularly, so we could see them flying around.
Claire also wants to know: is there anything you don't like about aeroplanes?
Oddly, I'm not actually like the biggest fan of flying on aeroplanes because I can't sleep on long journeys. So anything that's a long journey on a plane, not a massive fan of.
Pavan would like to know: do you ever feel pressured when you're working? Interesting question.
Sometimes, if there's a conference coming up and you're presenting in front of hundreds of people who are experts in their field, or if there's a deadline coming up, yeah, I feel quite a lot of pressure. And that's when I have to break down tasks into small bite-sized chunks and maybe ask for help if I need it.
Yeah, definitely echo what Maggie just said. And I think part of my job, it's really, really important that safety is our #1 priority, because if we get something wrong, there's hundreds of people on a plane, and if we get it wrong, they could all die in a horrible crash or something like that. So to be making decisions which could affect people's lives, there can be quite a lot of pressure behind that in making sure that you get it right and have got all your information there and you've not missed anything.
Okay. A question for Maggie from Emma. You said you want to be a teacher. So what kind of teacher? Science teacher, civics teacher, primary, secondary?
So I am looking at becoming a secondary maths teacher. And I say that because I love physics, but at GCSE and secondary level, I think maths is so important in the sciences, because it just, as soon as you go past GCSE A level sort of level, you rely so heavily on maths throughout all of it, and I hope to be able to also show, as I found when I was younger, I really wanted to apply maths in very everyday situations, and I hope as a physicist I can try and bring that side to maths and really help make it interesting and applicable.
Very cool. And we seem to have hit a rich vein of people interested in Egypt. Have you ever seen a real Egyptian mummy?
There's one at the museum if you want to see one. I've seen it, but so can any visitor. So when lockdown finishes, I think it's first floor, so go up the stairs, go all the way back to, if you come in the main entrance, go all the way to the back end of the museum, and it's normally the busiest gallery. So, but yeah, I think there's a live mummy there. Well, not a live mummy, but a real mummy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was Rachel asking that one, by the way.
Okay.
There's a couple I'm going to put together. So Amika asks, what can you do to make a subject interesting? And Summer says, have you ever tried teaching other kids and inspiring them to be a physicist? So that could be to both of you. Aisha, you may have done some outreach and things, or with your own guiding group as well.
Do you want to go first, Aisha?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the way that I try and make it interesting is to give that practical application to it and do sort of exciting experiments. So you'll do something like launching rockets, or as I was saying about the volcano, something that really grabs people's attention, and then some way to apply it to their everyday life. Because I think every subject can be interesting if you can see a use.
Sorry. I'll just get rid of them. Hang on.
Yeah, I think it's always good if you can find a use for what you're looking at.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think if you have, as a teacher, if you have passion for your subject, when I was younger, even if I wasn't particularly fond of the subject, for example, English, I said I didn't really like it. I had some really, really good English teachers, and there were some years that I really enjoyed it. It was just not a subject I got on with, but there were times that I really enjoyed it. So I think that it's all sometimes to do with the passion you bring for the subject, as well as making it, like, maths can be really boring sometimes if you're just doing question after question after question. So if you try and apply it and try to really understand it, and where you can apply it, if you're a student and you're not sure, ask your teacher or try and find out where it is, and it can make it 10 times more interesting.
Lily wants to know how long you've been working in your jobs, and Claire wants to know how many days a week you work. Come on, are you working hard? Tell us.
I don't really have, I work until what I'm doing is done. As a PhD student, you don't have hours. So sometimes I have a week where I feel a bit burnt out and I don't do as much. Other weeks I will work 7 days a week. It really depends on what's coming up, and what needs to be done, if there's deadlines. So yeah. And hours wise, I don't have hours. I just work until I can't anymore.
Yeah, I've been at Rolls Royce for 5 years, but in the sort of area that I work in now for nearly 2 years, I think. I work 5 days a week. I'm meant to work 37 hours a week, but you definitely find yourself doing more if you've got more on. It's very easy to do much more than that. And then when I was doing my degree, alongside working, I'd work the 37 hours a week, have a day at uni, as well as doing sort of all the coursework and that outside. So you could easily work the 7 days each week.
But don't, you mustn't.
No,
Annabelle wants to know what your favourite way is to travel, both of you. I think this has probably come from your hatred of not sleeping on aeroplanes or whatever it was. So how do you like to travel?
It's hard. I think, to be honest, traveling by either bike or foot is good because you travel just a little bit slower so you can actually enjoy your surroundings. But to go somewhere further away, I think a plane is probably the easiest way of doing it, even if you can't sleep.
Yeah, I think I'd have to say I just really enjoy that whole process of going to the airport, getting on the plane, being really excited, getting up at maybe 3 in the morning, even if you've got a 10 a.m. flight, just because you're very excited to go on holiday. So I'd say plane probably, but because it's that whole process of going on holiday that I always associate with going on a plane. So
For me, it's trains, but there we go. Nayara wants to know what the engines are like on different kinds of aeroplanes, jet aeroplanes and different aeroplanes. So are they all jets?
They're not all jets, actually. You can see behind me. This is a military aircraft, so they've got a slightly different engine, which doesn't have the big fan at the front, and then the one at the top you can see is one that you might go on holiday with, so that's called a gas turbine engine. And then you've got, I think there's a ramjet engine which sort of keeps pulsing lots of air out the back. There's loads of types depending on what you've got, and then helicopter engines as well, which are a turbo shaft engine. So they've got a turbine and then a shaft coming out, which goes to the big rotor that you see on the top.
Lucy wants to know if you've made friends in your jobs.
Definitely, yeah. I think all the teams that I've worked in actually have been really, really friendly and accepting of me sort of learning lots of things. And especially like during my apprenticeship, you get put in a group and you spend a whole year together in doing some pretty intense workshop stuff. So it's very difficult not to make friends in that situation.
Now, between Claire and Nayara, oh, sorry, Maggie, you haven't answered that one. Do you have any friends?
Yeah, I was just saying, no, none. No, at the museum, it's really, really good. We have loads and loads of staff talks where you'll come in a bit early in the morning, you have a coffee, a bit of cake, and you then have a talk by a different department, and then you can sort of network afterwards, as well as sort of weekly sort of team meetings to go over some new stuff, catch up. So you really get to know your department and even can network with other departments that you've never seen before, you didn't know exist because the museum's so big. So yeah, and you can see what other work people are doing, whether you can help or whether they could help you. So yeah, it's a lot of collaboration across the museum, and that's very important with museums and that.
Claire is very keen to know whether you've been to Egypt and seen a real pyramid.
I haven't actually. I should, but I haven't.
Okay. Hold on a second. Somebody wanted to know. There we go. Summer wanted to know, Aisha, if you ever thought about becoming a pilot, being as you like aeroplanes so much, and which is your favourite kind of aeroplane for fixing?
Oh gosh, I did want to be a pilot for quite a long time. That was going to be sort of my second option after sixth form. I was considering joining the RAF as a pilot, but my eyesight isn't good enough, unfortunately, for that sort of thing. So.
And it was Rachel who was asking about favourite aeroplane for fixing.
Favourite aeroplane for fixing.
Anyone you're getting on, yes.
Yeah. I haven't done lots of sort of hands-on work. I tend to be the sort of one to tell people how to fix it. So I think by default, it probably has to be the only engine that I've worked on hands-on, which is the Trent 900 engine, which goes on the Airbus A380, which is the really, really big plane. And actually, I've got a little paper model of it here. They're really, really big engines, and I got to help build one and go inside the fan case, which is surprisingly comfortable, actually. It's just the perfect size to fit in.
Abby wants to know, has being part of the Girl Guiding movement helped you in your career, do you think, or helped you up to this point?
I think it's given me quite a lot of confidence, actually. I think it's been a very supportive place to sort of explore what I wanted to do, and then also sort of moving into the leadership roles has given me a lot more confidence in explaining things and supporting other people and working in a team and sort of challenging myself to do things that I didn't think I could do.
Were you ever a guide or a brownie or anything, Maggie?
When I was younger, I used to be a brownie, but then we moved and I didn't get a chance to join one again. But yeah, when I was much younger, I think about 7 or 8, I used to be a brownie.
Well, there's a couple of questions left, but I'm afraid we have run out of time. So thank you everybody for coming along and joining us today. I hope lots of you got to ask lots of questions. I'd very much like to thank Aisha and Maggie for coming along and talking to us this evening. We didn't pay them to do this. They came and did this just for the love of doing it. We will be doing more of these next month on the 9th of December, if we're all allowed out again. We will be at the home of Isaac Newton, who is a very famous physicist in the past. And I'm just talking like this because I can't remember what it's called. What's it called? It will come back to me as soon as we do. Anyway, if you join us again, you will be able to find out about it the same way you found out about this one. If you want to meet 2 entirely different physicists and do all this again, but we will be either broadcasting that from the home of Isaac Newton or again from our own homes. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Thank you to Maggie. Thank you to Aisha. And I hope you all have a good evening and enjoy completing the badge. Just as a brief thing, we've just run out of badges. I have ordered some more. Okay, so there are another 1,000 coming out that we will be able to send out once everybody's finished their badges. So thanks very much to everybody for getting involved and doing it. This is what you're all after here. That's one of only 3 that are left on my desk now. Thanks a lot. Bye bye, Aisha.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.